Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals. Auscast.
G'day Nest family, great to be with you again. Garby here, Drew as well. We're not going to waste too much time because there is plenty to talk about in regards to the West Coast Eagles. It feels like we've had several State of the Union addresses regarding the club, their form, their fortunes on and off the field. But this is another opportune time because it's as humiliating as it's been. It's as dark as it's been for the club on the field, Drew Jones. So we need to take stock and ask some serious questions about where this football club is going right now.
G'day, Garby. Yeah, back in lovely, rainy, cloudy, cold Melbourne. Just getting my setup here.
Anything's better than Friday night, mate.
Yeah, so, that sucked. That really sucked. I took mum and dad to the game and first trip to Optus Stadium. There was, a bit of excitement around being able to watch the Eagles. Mum was squealing in the pre-game, seeing the players up close. She hadn't been to a game in 5 or 6 years.
Oh, that's nice.
And it was really nice. And, this nice, wholesome family moment. And it was kind of ruined pretty quickly by the Eagles. So I'll be really interested to get your take because the live viewing experience is always so different to TV. And we just made some absolutely horrible errors and just gifted Richmond goals, right? And it didn't just feel like we got beaten by a better team and that obviously we're a team in transition, but we looked like a complete mess.
Yeah, well, we were a complete mess. The turnovers were horrific. They didn't bother me that much, though, because I know we're trying to change the game plans. We're trying to bite off some kicks through the corridor, and we got them horribly wrong.
Yeah.
But that didn't bother me so much as, yet again, our complete lack of organisation defensively and our inability to run both ways. That bothered me the most. And a big question off the bat, and it seems ridiculous to ask it. Are we actually unfit? Are we actually not at AFL fitness standards? And people might point to COVID and say it's hit us now, it hit Melbourne teams in January, and maybe there's lingering after effects. I don't know. But it actually does seem like we are unable to run as hard as you need to run in AFL footy both ways.
Well, this is the thing, right, is that normally when we talk about a team being seemingly unable to go with their opponents back the other way, you always chalk it up to effort and drive and pure want to run defensively. But, it's just so stark that maybe you have to put, almost half the list has been injured at some stage during the season so far. You throw in a few COVID isolations, even just being in isolation but not having COVID for a week or something like that. That's obviously going to cause issues as well.
Yeah.
So it seems like we are behind with our preparation, with our match fitness. And then you throw in all the connection piece and the new game plan and the fact that you're also getting flogged. It's like a perfect storm of disorganisation.
If it was only these 3 weeks where it's happened, then I'd be happy to point to that. But we can't forget what happened last season. Exactly the same on so many occasions. Geelong away, Sydney at Cardinia, the Dogs at Optus Stadium, Collingwood at the MCG, giving up 6 goals to St Kilda at halftime to lose a game. We had so many of those performances that it can't just be perhaps the impact of COVID and injuries over these 3 weeks. There's something more at play here because last week we saw it too many times. The club just seems on field completely broken. They seem an absolute mess. And it's fair to say now that it's as bad as it's ever been at the Eagles. I know the Ken Judge years statistically were as bad, but we didn't have as much talent then. The talent was ordinary. We've got talent now, and they're performing like this. It's fair to say that it's as bad as it's ever been.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a collection of 3 weeks of performances that bad. I can't remember what happened. Do you remember what happened after the Sydney game last season?
No, but there was so many of those performances last season which I group with this campaign. And we had a lot of them in the Ken Judge years where we got thumped, but the team was, we had a mishmash of players. Like, Judge brought in like Mark Miranda and Richard Taylor and these sorts of guys who were just middle of the road AFL players to try and make us semi-competitive, and we weren't. We've got really good players in the midfield at the moment. I know we've been affected badly, but they should not be getting smashed like this. And we're pointing to the fitness, we're pointing to the game plan being changed. They are so devoid of confidence and belief at the moment. And, you do start to point at other things, Drewy. Like, I watched us run out and I thought, geez, there doesn't seem to be much fight and spirit there. They didn't seem to be amped up enough. And then let me ask you this straight away, because this was mentioned by a few people. Maybe you didn't see it because you're at the ground. The way in which the Eagles responded emotionally after that defeat, when it's the 3rd defeat in a row and the back-to-back defeat of that nature on a Friday night, the laughing and the joking, it seemed to me like they weren't hurting enough. It seemed to me like that.
Yeah,
that actually, I looked at that and I went, I don't know if there really is enough desire there.
Yeah, I didn't see that at the ground. I did stay till the end though, which I thought was a good effort.
Probably best effort of the night from an Eagle.
So I often err in the side of, on the side of the player with the post-game smiles and handshakes and cuddles and stuff. That's my default position, is usually towards the player and saying, well, they're at work, they're allowed to have a laugh and a joke at some stage, as we all are. But also you do have to understand the duty you've got to your football club and your fans, and you have to understand the context of where the club's at.
Yeah.
Like I'll give you an example. So Jason Horne-Francis on the weekend playing for North Melbourne, he gave away that blatant free kick by sort of giving a cheap shot to Jack Silvani after he disposed of the ball. And he's sort of been lauded for the fact that he was willing to show a bit of grunt and a bit of attitude, even though it was an undisciplined act. So would you have preferred to have seen a West Coast player or two get stuck into the Richmond players or give away a few free kicks, or, Elliot Yeo, people who criticised him, I actually liked seeing him throw his mouth guard and kick up a bit of a fuss, because it showed that he cared what was going on.
Yeah.
When I watch a lot of ice hockey, I love it when the LA Kings goaltender breaks his stick on the goal because he's pissed off that he's let in a goal, or when guys crush their sticks on the boards coming off after a loss. Like, I love seeing that stuff.
Yeah.
But we don't see much of that from West Coast. The only tiny glimmer of it was when Shannon Hearn ran through a Richmond player on the boundary line, gave him a nice hip and shoulder in the tummy at some stage, and a bit of frustration came out from him. But I didn't see much of it elsewhere. No. What do you think what is that symptomatic of? Is it that the players know exactly where the club are at, and essentially the game was lost by the end of the first quarter? I mean, it's a lot easier to accept a defeat when you already know you've lost in the first quarter, right?
Go back to my original point. I have no issue with players talking to a mate on the other team, someone they've grown up with. In the Rioli's case, his family. By all means, smile and laugh and all that. But it seemed like almost every single player was doing that. Greg Clark was the only one who seemed to be down on his knees, really hurting in his first game. I'm sure others are hurting. I'm sure it burns them. But, there doesn't seem to be enough of it. Liam Ryan throws himself about a bit, but that's frustration because he's not getting the footy. We've observed Elliot Yeo doing it for a season and a bit, and that's a good point. I think a lot of his frustration comes from other players not having that same grunt as he does, that same desire to really fight. Yeah, I'd love to see someone start up a stink and think, I'm just going to get in a little melee here because we need to change the pace of this game. We need to fire the crowd up. We just need to do something. I'll give away a 50 if it means we can get into their heads a little bit. There's none of that. You know, and where does it come from? I think it just comes from a team that doesn't have spirit at the moment. I think that's the main word. There isn't spirit there. You know, they've spoken about it being rectified in the preseason, and maybe all the COVID issues and injuries have affected things, but it happened last season as well. So clearly the symptoms of that are still around.
Yeah, it's a similar problem, and it gets exacerbated when things are going even worse, and then throw in injuries and COVID and a few other things. And yeah, I just think this was coming, Garby, except it's just been unbelievably accelerated by extenuating circumstances. The bottom has just fallen out of the club.
Yeah.
But you can't put it all on the players. So your point about this earlier about fitness and injury management and other things that are going on, there's something bigger at play. It's just so hard for us from the outside to really comment. I'll say this though, and which I haven't said to you privately, and I haven't said it to anyone. Speaking to someone within football who had a connection at West Coast, someone who works at West Coast, they said to that person that the club is a mess.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That's someone who works at the club currently.
Yeah.
So the club's a mess.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that.
And I don't know what the reasoning is.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying that without giving a lot of context, but I don't actually know exactly what the reasons are.
Yeah.
But I mean, would you describe the club as a mess right now?
I mean, I've heard a couple of similar things from people around the place. Yep.
So you the way that the positions of power have been reshuffled, you know, say like Gavin Bell taking over as football manager and Vozo exiting the club, there's been chopping and changing with list managers and things like that, recruiting staff. Doesn't feel like we have got the right pieces in the right places.
No, I think everyone got a little bit happy with themselves at the club all the way through after the 2018 grand final.
And that's okay. That actually happens all the time.
Yeah. Teams
get to the summit and they've reached their professional goal in their life. And then sometimes, you know, we all thought it was weird when Alistair Clarkson started trying to trade all the senior players, but he wanted to refresh the club and the culture and get hungry people in and change the direction of the club. And the results ended up showing that was the right thing to do.
So there's a lot of people at the club who have been there for a long time. The CEO most notably, and we love him. He's done an incredible job for the football club. But it's got to a point where you do start raising those questions. Has Trevor Nisbet been there too long? You know, I saw Tim Jepp in the Greg Clark video. I mean, Tim Jepp, what an Eagles legend. Been there since the 90s with Mick Malthouse. He's still at the club. It's nothing. It's not an insult to ask the question, have these people been around the football club for too long? Does it need fresh minds? Does it need people who can shake things up a little bit? And then the coach has been there for a long time. Has his voice become tired on the playing group? Is he still able to get the best out of them? I mean, that's an obvious one that gets played out all the time, but you do have to look at people in the back room as well who have been there for a long time. 2018 was that success almost out of nowhere a little bit. And you do wonder if people got just too happy with themselves. The club's booming off the field, record memberships. There's truckloads of money in the bank. They spent tens of millions on a new training centre and there's tens of millions still to play with. And you just wonder if everyone got too comfortable with life and they stopped developing and being the cutting edge club that the West Coast Eagles were known to be.
Yeah, and I think there's been bad luck and with recruiting and different bits and pieces have happened that have been unexpected. You know, and people have spoken about the Tim Kelly trade a lot this week, and Jake Nile wrote, I thought was a really good article in The Age about it. And his point was valid that they're certainly not getting the output which they paid for, but also he had the anonymous list manager who said, well, they thought they were a chance to win a flag, and we missed the top 4 by one game, which that game is stuffed up against Hawthorn. And then you think, well, one more class player, who knows if they're the difference. And then we didn't see that 2020 team in a normal season. It was a COVID season, and we still nearly finished in the top 4. Remember that game against the Western Bulldogs at Metricon Stadium when Nick Nat didn't play, and there was basically there was a reviewed goal that was touched on the goal line that went the Bulldogs' way, and they win that game and we don't make the top 4. You just never know, like, things could have panned out so differently.
Yeah.
And that is footy. And things have gone south quickly, but I also believe that things can change pretty quickly.
So that's the next part of the question. Like, with the list right now, what would you like to see happen? Personally, I don't see how many moves we can make trade-wise to regenerate the list. Andrew Gaff's one that I spoke about last season. I think Andrew Gaff's days are numbered. He's one of my favourite Eagles players. I had him top 5 in our Players of the Decade list for the decade just gone. But I think his legs have gone, and I don't think he provides much value to us at the moment. He might do to another club as an experienced outside player who can add a bit of guile to what they do. I don't see him doing it for us. If we could trade him, I think that's a big win. I don't see what other moves we can make at the moment when you look at players that we still need to make us competitive and guys that would be willing to go or have enough trade value. What moves would you like to see us do? Or do you want to see us stick with what we've got and still give it another crack? I think we're in denial if we keep going down that path. But Luke Shuey, speaking this week, seemed to make out that, things can turn pretty quickly.
Yeah, so I just think you have to pick the experienced core and then rotate through all the different players that we need to have a look at. So this is a year where we can now assess the list, work out exactly what we've got and what the pieces are that we want going forward. As far as what we can do at the end of the season, when we know that Hearn and JK won't be with us next season. And then it feels like it would be useful for us to clear out a bit of the salary cap. It's just a question of, like, who are you willing to sacrifice and do they want to move? Guys like Liam Duggan and Elliot Yeo, who are two I think that other clubs would want, they're probably too valuable to us to get rid of. Like, you can't just dump everyone out. You still need to have experienced, good players at the club. Like Duggan, they could just make a decision with Duggan and say, let's get him vice captain and play him as an inside midfielder. And, we know that we've got him there for 6 years and he'll be a key plank in our future. Like, they could do that if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And, same with Yo. So it leaves us in a really fascinating position because a lot of the premiership winners, those extra guys who still have a bit to offer, maybe they just don't have quite enough to offer to tempt other clubs. Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Yeah. It's tough to be ruthless and think about these guys leaving. But if they want to rebuild the club, then they need draft picks. So there's only one way to do that, and that's to move people out.
Yeah. Jack Darling's a player that maybe you'd look at moving on, and to some, key forwards are very valuable. Maybe someone that can still generate, an early second round pick, for example. That's one I look at. You wouldn't want to get rid of Yo. Agree, Duggan's too valuable. But, you might have players, Drewy, coming to the Eagles saying, look, I'm sorry, but I want out. Like, I don't want to go through what we are going to go through for the next 2 to 4 years. I want to make the most of my time now. They might ask for a trade. That's the other aspect of it.
Yeah, well, think about how useful, say, Liam Duggan would be to, like, a Hawthorn or maybe Collingwood or a Victorian team, because he's obviously from there, who are ahead of us in their regeneration, even a St Kilda or something like that. Like, they would love a Liam Duggan, premiership player, lock him in at halfback for the season, durable, reliable. And so what does that get you? Maybe a pick in the 20s?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's pretty handy for us.
Yeah.
But that's a tough decision to make because we all love Liam Duggan.
Yeah. But he looks at it and goes, well, okay, I won a premiership. I like the club. But 3-4 years of this, and then I'm 30 years old. And when the team's ready to have a crack at winning a flag again, I'm gone. I don't want to be in that position. So that's the other aspect of it that we're going to have to deal with. We're in for a tough time. I honestly think we're in for, it could be 4 or 5 years of pain because, they don't want to use the word rebuild, but we have to. The list is in a very awkward spot. There are not a lot of top-level young talents coming through. Oscar Allen's the only one. We haven't seen Campbell Chesser yet. High hopes. Oscar Allen's the only real blue-chip young talent we've got. Hopefully Chesser is. The others might develop into very good players, a Luke Foley, a Luke Edwards, and so on. Bailey Williams maybe. But the Oscar Allen's the only one you're certain about now, right?
Yeah, you guess you can't be certain on Chesser because it's just too early.
Yeah.
But I personally do have faith in Campbell Chesser. But
so do I. But we haven't seen him play yet, so you can't make
we don't know. Yeah, and it does feel like we're starting from a long way back.
Yeah.
Like this is not a club that appears to be ready for a rebuild. Like the list profile just does not lend itself to rebuilding. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do. I mean, as it stands, we've got pick 1. Like, is there anything that you've seen from West Coast that makes you think that we're going to not finish 18?
Yeah, only because North Melbourne might end up being a little bit worse. Essendon will eventually win some games. It'll probably be us and North. We might jag a few towards the end of the season when we get more players back. Win a couple at home against sides that are, they've got the queue in the rack. Yeah, and maybe we jump above North. But we'll have 1, 2, or 3. Almost certainly. So, and we're going to lose pick 1 because that'll be Will Ashcroft who'll go to Brisbane. So you're looking at players beyond that. But that's exciting in a way. Used to laugh at clubs who said that, but that's the way it is for us now. So
yeah, I mean, being able to recruit essentially the best talent in the draft, except for Ashcroft, that's exciting.
Yeah, and whenever we've done that, we've gone well in the past. Is Adam Simpson going to be there though? We've asked this question numerous times. Is he going to be the coach to lead us through the changeover?
Yeah, I still say yes. And it's funny that you say that because I was going to ask you, I think the reality here is that we're probably going to lose the next 2 games by possibly over 100 points.
Maybe, but at the same time, Brisbane could play in second gear and beat us by 40, 50. Melbourne could do the same.
Well, Melbourne have been in second gear and they've been beating teams easily.
Yeah. I mean, they could beat us by 100 if they want to. And also, usually when a team knows there's a good chance they're going to get belted, they go in with the mindset of we need to prevent that. So we could actually play a strong defensive game, only be 3-4 goals down at halftime and then end up losing by 7 or 8. Like that could happen as well.
You reckon there's a chance we might only be 3 or 4 goals down against Melbourne or Brisbane?
If we play our absolute best defensively and they play in second gear.
Okay. Oh, look, I'm just thinking on the evidence that I've seen, that's going to be hard for us to avoid heavy defeats over the next fortnight. Like when fast forward to in 2.5 weeks' time, if we've lost to Melbourne and Brisbane by a combined 200 points, like is there a world where Adam Simpson is not coach?
Yeah, of course there is. Now he might decide that this is not the best thing forward for everyone. The club's going to have to, we spoke about it before, there's people at the club who are going to have to start looking at their own position. And when you're doing that, then you have to make changes, right? So they might decide, listen, we need to just mix things up a little bit. This is becoming too embarrassing for the club. Yeah, back-to-back 100-point defeats. Yeah, could definitely happen. And it just might be the right thing for everyone. But Adam Simpson looks at the board square in the eyes and says, I'm the man for your rebuild. I'm so devoted to this. Then he keeps his job. Anything short of that, and I think the club either decides they need a new voice to come in or the losses are simply becoming too heavy. Alistair Clarkson, someone who's been spoken about, the Eagles could throw money at him and you'd be worth asking the question. We spoke to someone before the game on Sunday, Sydney-Brisbane, and I thought, well, hang on, this is the perfect mix. I think we've mentioned it once before, but I could see a Don Pyke, Dean Cox combination coming to the Eagles, couldn't you? Both from Sydney, both doing really well there. Don Pyke's got good runs on the board. I think if there's a vacancy that opens up, he would be not a warm favourite, but right in the mix, like up the top of the odds board, Don Pyke, with Dean Cox as his right-hand man.
So this is great insight from you, based in Sydney, have a bit to do with the Swans via work. I wouldn't have thought of that, but on paper, it makes perfect sense, really.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time to have a coach that's under pressure, because with Buckley and Lyon and then Clarkson all available, there's some pretty heavy hitters not coaching right now. But my view is that Adam Simpson there's no chance that he concedes to the board that maybe he's not the man. And if that's the only way that he doesn't continue in the job, then that won't happen. That's in my view.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I was very confident going into the season that he would be the coach for the medium term, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. So maybe I need to reassess my views on this. He has to take some blame.
Oh, of course.
When you're watching the way the team is playing, at some point the head coach has to concede that they haven't done the job.
Yeah. It's a concerning time, and the sad thing is the first month was so promising. There was so much competitiveness there. They gave us so much pride. And then, we go back to close to our best 22. We're still missing key players. Nick Natanui's absence was there for all to see. Stranatica, I'm sorry, but he got absolutely monstered in the ruck. We could not win a tap out, and you could kind of see why he hasn't played at AFL level, unfortunately. He looked good against Port around the ground, but in the ruck situation, Nankervis and Soldo just did whatever they wanted. So his absence is sorely felt. We miss Tom Barrass. We miss Elliot Yeo. Dom Sheed's still out. Tommy Cole, Oscar Allen. There are still a lot of players out. But the competitiveness is not there, and it wasn't there last season in too many games. So there's strong evidence to suggest something is horribly wrong, and the head coach has to certainly wear the blame for that. So, these are all things that Eagles fans are speaking about right now, and we could see some changes with that in mind. The Bronx cheering of Jack Darling on Friday night at times, what did you make of that?
I found it funny at the time. I took it relatively lighthearted. I saw a few people on social media sort of saying it was pretty crappy by Eagles fans. I come from the point of view that I think that he is working hard. So I wasn't Bronx cheering him. But fans pay you money. You're kind of allowed to do whatever you want.
Yeah, I know. And there was one early when he took a mark and he hadn't touched the footy, and that's normal. There was one in the second quarter where the Eagles fans were crying for the team to kick it to him, and they took their time, and eventually they did. And then they sort of Bronx cheered that, you finally found him. And then I think it just became almost a joke in the crowd, to play on. I don't think it was so much directed at Jack as it was, this is horrible. It's something for us to actually point out throughout the night. And Jack probably doesn't look at it that way, but, that's just the way it goes sometimes in a crowd. Sometimes something develops like that. I don't think there's too much that needs to be made of it. What about, before we move on to the Nest Medal votes and some of the listener questions and looking ahead to the weekend, what about the celebration of JK's 700th, which we should give credit to? What a champion. The way he soldiered on through the game. Just a hero. Were you disappointed with the failure of enough players to get around him and being aware of the fact that it was a massive milestone?
Oh, every player on the ground should have gone to him, for sure. But the moment itself was so good, because when he kicked his second goal of the night, and obviously we were getting absolutely pants, I said to Mum, I was like, out of all this shitness, we might actually see quite a historic moment here. If they can find him a couple more times, we know he's been converting really well. And then when he picked it up and kicked that fourth goal to bring up 700, that was awesome. Yeah, everyone was standing and applauding, and obviously the Eagles knew it was a possibility, so they had a little tribute come up on the board. And people will say that I'm biased because Jack Riewoldt is Fox Footy, but he was applauding down the other end, and he was applauding at the crowd, and that was, I thought, quite a nice moment. And I saw Bolter. Was it Bolter went up to him and gave him a little cuddle and a high five, which was good to see.
Yeah.
He's been he might even be my favourite Eagle of all time.
Yeah,
he's in that conversation. He is a warrior, a legacy player. Simo keeps saying, which I quite like.
Yeah, it's a line that he uses quite a bit, and it's certainly fitting of JK. Right.
Just before you get to the votes, I was trying to take things in while I was at the game that I could sort of report back. Having watched the Eagles live and up close, and I haven't really got much for you except Sam Petrevski-Seton. Very vocal.
Right, okay, that's good.
That does a lot of directing of traffic, yelling out like structural stuff at stoppages and when they were setting up in the back six, because he moved to half back at one stage during the game. Just thought I'd just throw that in there. That was about the only positive thing I could think of.
All right. So the Nest medal votes, I gave 5 to JK, 4 to Duggan, who I thought had a really good game, like just clean off half back. I gave 3 to Shuey, who I thought tried hard. He made a couple of mistakes, but he didn't have much help ruck-wise. So he was constantly chasing out of clearances, and he chased hard, put on some big tackles, tried to get us going. The same with Redden, and then 1 to Clark, who had a really good debut. What were your 5 to 1? And then we'll give the Nest medal votes.
Let me bring it up on my Twitter, but I gave 5 to JK, partially because of the 700, but also he battled manfully all night. So I gave 4 to Greg Clark. So I was bitterly disappointed that Simo stuck him out in a wing. Like he's an inside midfielder. Like, can we play him in his position, please? 195 centimetres, big guy, over 90 kilos, and he lays tackles for fun. Like, let's get him inside. So he played his role really well on the wing. Like, he's kept to his position, made himself available for kicks. West Coast looked for him a little bit, which was good. He was clean enough. He laid 8 tackles, I think, on the night. I can't remember a West Coast player debuting and having, 25 and 8 too many times. So good on him for doing that. And then in the last quarter, he got himself into the game. He attended a few more centre bounces. So that was good to see. The one positive from the night, apart from JK, really. Yeah. And then Duggan 3, Shuey 2, West 1. I thought those 3 battled really hard. You could see the effort and endeavour. They were cracking in. And that's the baseline for success for us right now, is cracking in. And they did that.
Oh. So after tallying up the Nest medal votes, which you did, JK got the 5, unsurprisingly. Duggo got the 4. Those 2 were the clear standouts. And then it was a mix between the likes of Clark, West, Redden, Shuey, Witherden. Clark ended up with the 3. Good on him on debut. Connor West with the 2. Well done, Westy. And Jack Redden gets the 1. So the only real change to the leaderboard is Jack Redden moving up to 7 votes. So he closes the gap a bit on the likes of Nation, Rioli ahead of him. And Liam Duggan moves up to 5. So he's someone we might see get up in the top 3 by the end of the season, potentially. He's looking nice. He's moving well. It's good to see Duggo playing some pretty good footy. That's pleasing at the moment. All right. Do you have some questions from our listeners that you put out on Twitter? Because we don't have too much time left.
All right. Stand by. Yes. Thank you for responding. So I asked for some thoughts and questions and other bits and bobs. So Tommy, regular listener, it might not be what people want to hear, but I don't think we can, and that's look forward to anything positive over the next 2 weeks. My read is too many guys missed too many pre-season sessions combined with COVID and injuries. It's eroded our fitness. Yeah. I'm surprised our strength and conditioning aren't under more scrutiny.
Yeah,
which we've already touched on, haven't we? Alex Paul, who's been contributing to the Patreon.
Good on him.
I think a greater convo is needed around the outcomes of a post-season review. Basically, every key figure got promoted. We need to address the dual recruiting list role in that review and get the foundations right. The 21 review should have been the time and place to do that. And we touched on that a little bit as well. But it's a good point. The stuff behind the scenes is clearly affecting on-field. Shane Beaton, only immediate way to stop these beltings is to alter the game plan looks like our current style isn't working, and 130 points against last week were from turnovers. Well, this week and last week. Probably needs to get back to basics a bit more one-on-ones and more defensive pressure. It's a pretty good point. James Royce, so as long as we learn from the next few weeks, the side really has nothing to lose at the moment. There are no expectations. Just wanted to get some games into the up-and-comers and look forward to the next few years. Man on man. Let's go old school. 18 on 18. Yo and Shuey to half back. Gaff stays on the wing and let the young guys have a crack in the middle. Won't solve anything, but at least we can have a look at the future engine room. Shuey half back has been something we've talked about previously.
Yeah.
I've kind of liked him in the midfield the last 2 weeks. He's tackling hard and his endeavour's good. He's the captain, so I'm okay with him attending centre bounces and being in there from the start. Once Nick Nat is, I guess I was going to say once he's back, but it's still ages, isn't it? Like the Shuey Nick Nat chemistry is so good. We're missing that at the moment.
Yeah.
Shane says, I think the kind of footy we're playing at the moment requires a fair bit of confidence. That's lacking in the group at the moment, understandably. Do you agree with that?
Oh, for sure. Undoubtedly. Yeah, I do. I like Shahan Khan's comments, which we alluded to before. He says, well, Trevor Nisbet has led West Coast to great heights, success in a benchmark sporting institution. It's probably time for a change. Changing the coach won't solve systemic issues. It'll just put a Band-Aid on it. Insipid performances that are becoming the norm. A well-run club shouldn't have a player tamper with the SADA test, have a record amount of lower leg injuries. The Castore debacle, that's just ridiculous. If we're going to, Patrick Naish doesn't even have a number. Are you actually friggin' kidding me? For one of the biggest sporting clubs in the country? Ridiculous. Bungled COVID protocols so severely. Other clubs are making progress in diversity and inclusion, while West Coast has got issues wrong in that regard. Some of the comments from even Simo and Michael Pryor on those things have been controversial. Yeah, I like those comments. There does seem to be something wrong at executive and administration level.
Yeah, when you put it all together like that, it doesn't sound great, does it? This is just not stuff that West Coast traditionally have made mistakes with. Like they drop the ball on a few things and then when you put it all together, it doesn't look great.
Yeah, great to get a number of ideas from our listeners. We really appreciate that and some really good points there. And I like some of the positional ideas, like Luke Shuey to halfback, I think makes a bit of sense, a bit of composure and leadership back there and chuck a couple guys through the middle. I'd like to see Drewy, the small forwards that are constantly rotated out, get a run at it. So Petruccelli, Jones, Langdon, just play them for a period of 6 weeks. And that means you rest to Jamie Cripps, you rest to Liam Ryan, Willie Rioli's injured at the moment. So be it. We know what those guys can do. They can miss a week here and there and just keep Petruccelli, Jones, Langdon in and along with a couple of the other young guys and just say, show me what you got. Those guys are playing for their careers, right? Jack Petruccelli, I reckon, maybe gets a go at another club if the Eagles had to discard him. Does Jermaine Jones? Not sure. Does Zach Langdon? Probably not. So frame it to them that way. You're playing for your careers. We're giving you a run in the team. Show us what you can do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Langdon's out this week, according to Ryan. I had a look at Ryan Daniels for his injury updates.
Okay.
So I'll give you what I think our team looks like this week. So Stranatica is in COVID protocols and Bailey Williams not available to play. So crazy Hugh Dixon is going to lead the ruck with Harry Edwards as the pinch hitting backup, I reckon. So I'm loving the thought of Hugh Dixon in the ruck. I liked him around the ball against Collingwood. I think he's got something about him. At the moment, he doesn't get enough of the ball and he's a bit inconsistent, but I don't mind him. So Dixon in the ruck, obviously Shuey and Kelly in there. I'm hoping to see Clark inside mid, Nation Gaff on the wings as we would expect. So the back six has been a bit hit with COVID. No Witherden, no Nelson. So I've got Rotham coming into the back six and Hoff as well. And then I've got, who else have I brought in? Petruccelli in the forward line who comes in for Langdon. Oh, Langdon played in the twos last week, didn't he? He's not playing. So Kennedy, Cripps, Petruccelli, West, Darling is the front six, and then Redden, Waterman, Petrevski, Seaton, Harry Edwards on the bench. Sub Jones, and then Foley's available after COVID protocols, but I thought maybe Rotham, since he played in the Waffle last week, gets to go ahead of him.
Yeah. I think Huey Dixon's giving us a bit more on the ruck than Stranatica is, so that's okay. McInerney and Fort are a really good combination at the moment for Brisbane. Like really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, Oscar's a great defensive ruckman. He shuts ruckman down. He doesn't have to do that against us.
No. And Darcy Fort's doing really well up forward.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah.
I mean, the Jackson Nelson, was he on Shea Bolton early? Like, was he given that role early on in the game? Is that how you viewed it?
No, I'm not sure. But Shea Bolton cut us to pieces. So if he was on him, that's not great.
Well, Nelson was on him early, and then I don't know what happened. Maybe he just happened to be alongside him a couple of times, and it looked like he was given that role. But, you know, Jacko's out this week. I mean, we spoke about it last week, but, you know, you look at Clark and you look at Nation, how they've come in and added to the team. I mean, I look at it and I go, there must be a bunch of other guys in the state leagues who can be, sounds like a very harsh thing to say and a mean thing to say, but can be of greater value. When you look at what Clark and West and Naish have given the Eagles since coming in from the outside. I know Naish had a shocker and he turned the ball over a lot. But, yeah, I don't really see Jacko being part of our system moving forward unless they want to give him a defined role and see how he goes with that. We spoke about that all last week.
Yeah, I don't know if he may not walk back into the team when he's available again if we've got more guys available.
Yeah, so it's going to most probably be ugly this week. Hopefully we can see a strong showing. Does Josh Kennedy go to Brisbane? I'm not sure he does.
I just think, well, I would absolutely anticipate a rest for Hearn and Kennedy soon. It's just been like, can we afford to rest them?
Yeah. I'm not sure JK makes the trip all the way there.
Yeah. 8-day break. But, yeah, do you just save him up for Melbourne the week after?
Yeah. You know.
Geez, we're going to be thin if JK isn't playing.
Yeah.
Winder kicked 2 goals in the Waffle. I'd love to see Winder play. I just had this funny feeling maybe he wasn't quite match fit and ready to go. I'm not sure if he's quite there yet.
I don't really see the point. Sorry, I don't really see the point for Josh Kennedy playing through this for the whole season, which we've spoken about. Like, I think he'll pick a spot in the next 4 to 6 weeks and say, you know, I'll announce it on a Monday or Tuesday and have my big celebration and say farewell. Maybe when he kicks 700 for the Eagles, maybe that's his goodbye.
That's interesting. Does Josh Kennedy, do you reckon that he absolutely loves playing footy?
Yeah, I think he does, but I think it just gets really hard on the body. I think he had to be convinced to play this season, and he's fully committed because he's a great pro, but he doesn't need to put himself through this. He's on the Mount Rushmore of key forwards. He's done everything in the game. Coleman's, All-Australians, Premiership. Like, Shannon Hearn looks like he can play out the season and then say goodbye and announce it maybe a week or two before the end of the season. A key forward in a team getting battered like this is a very hard role. And I can see JK saying, you know, there's really no need for me to do this. And the club saying, yeah, we don't need to put you through this either.
I mean, if he wants to do it, then great.
Yeah.
But I want to see as many Josh Kennedy goals for West Coast as I can. I want to jam in every single one of them that he's got left. That's my view.
Do you think the players and the staff actually think we can turn this around and go on a run?
Well, and win games.
Do you think they do? Like Luke Shuey spoke about it during the week as if, you know, we can actually, maybe not this season, but maybe next season, get back up there and compete again. Are they in denial?
I think you have to say that publicly.
Right.
I just think, like, if you rock up to a press conference as a player or coach and you say it's going to be hell for 2 years, like those headlines are not good.
Yeah, but he could say we know where we're at. We have to look to the future. We're going to compete and try and win every game. But, you know, the window may have passed us by, but we're going to try and do everything we can to win while also preparing for the future. He was speaking as if, because he cited winning the wooden spoon and then making the prelim the next year, back in the early part of the decade.
Yeah, and I kind of liked that he said that. I think you still got to sell hope. I mean, do I think it's going to happen? Absolutely not.
I actually wonder if they do think it's going to happen. Or it can still happen.
Is that a good thing?
In a way, yes, but you worry about us, being in denial and getting into even more trouble as a result.
I think if the players think that that turnaround is possible, I think that's great. But if the club are acutely aware in the positions of power where we're at, then that's the best possible result. Is that the players want and think we can win, but the club are doing the right things to set us up for the long term.
Yeah. Whew. A lot of things to mull over the next 2 weeks, mate, as we watch us play Brisbane and Melbourne. Probably won't be pretty, but hopefully we'll see better effort amid the fear of heavy defeats. Big talking points for the club to go through. Fans are concerned, and I think there's some very shrewd views coming through as a result. Hopefully we can watch the club dig themselves out of it and some positives come in time, but it's going to be very interesting indeed. Drewy, thank you, mate. It's been an important but ultimately unenjoyable podcast, but a very important one nonetheless.
Garby, they're all enjoyable when you're involved.
Thanks, mate.
And just take pleasure in the little things. A goal from Josh Kennedy, a little 45 inside kick from Naish. When Brady Hoff does something impressive, just enjoy those little things and try not to worry too much about the score. Otherwise, you'll be stressed.
Exactly. Well, I think that's what we realised after Friday night. The score all of a sudden doesn't matter for the rest of the season. It is about all those other things now. Like, it's not about wins and losses anymore. So I think we will have a shift mentally, and we'll look for the joys then as a result. Good on you, mate. Have a good week.
Thanks, mate.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.